Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. Again, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being on the call today. What we're going to be talking about today is the visual inspections and the disclosure forms, part of our process. You know, when representing a buyer or representing a seller, these are forms that are necessary in order for you to be in compliance, but more so to protect yourself from any potential claim or complaint that comes in. So with that being said, what's the purpose? What is the purpose of the visual inspection disclosure? So I just want to kind of outline and just give you a parameter of what the visual inspection disclosure is. It's basically a document that allows your perspective when viewing the property. That's really what it is. Now, you're not going to go there, wear a hard hat, a tool belt, and start moving furniture left and right. That's not what the visual inspection, it's basically what it states. It's a visual inspection report. That's what it is. So what you see as you walk into the property, as you're going in before looking at the side of the property, the front of the property, the doors, and just getting a visual on it. And then once you're inside the property, just having a mental note of what you see that should be documented for the sake of the buyer and also for the sake of the seller as well. So it gives the consumer your view of what you see from the eyes of a licensed agent. So it's a very unique form, and it does provide additional information that will be provided to both, not just the buyer, but also the seller. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So there was a case study back in 1985. It was the and Einstein, Estens and Strandberger. The listing broker had a duty to the buyer to disclose what the listing broker should have known. Okay. In fact, visual netting on a hillside was indicated of a slide movement, and unstable triggered a duty to disclose. So this particular, and you can look this up, folks. You can definitely look it up. You can Google and do some research regarding this particular lawsuit claim. And it really just talks about the potential that if you know of a potential issue regarding a property, then ultimately, one, the seller should always disclose, right? We always talk about disclosures. Now, the importance of an agent perspective is also the big picture, right? The big picture is like, if you notice something, then it is your fiduciary responsibility, meaning that if you hear a dog barking, maybe it's the neighbor, or you hear the freeway, maybe it's adjacent to the freeway, or maybe near a school. That is something that I would definitely highly recommend that you indicate, okay? And the reason is because maybe the seller has lived in the property 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, and they're so immune to the sound that it doesn't bother them. But for a new buyer, it may be a nuisance. And that may be something that makes or breaks the deal, meaning they wouldn't have bought the property if they knew about this nuisance, okay? So it is very, very important, folks, that you document anything and everything that may potentially be an issue down the line. And that issue is as soon as the buyer moves into the property, and now it's like, I didn't realize that we were so close to the school and we hear the kids. And what if the homeowner now sleeps during the day, works at night? And they didn't realize when they were actually doing their due diligence on the property if it was never disclosed. And now they're realizing, I wouldn't have bought this property if I would have known about this material fact. And that's all what we're trying to lecture you is be diligent in your position. Be that proactive agent. that ultimately sees and thinks outside the box. Now, the documents are there for your protection and for your client's protection as well. So understanding the dynamics of the forms, and more so the specifics to the forms, and really getting into the details of it will make you a more efficient agent, okay? So it's all about education. And believe me, to this day, 24 years later, I'm still being educated on the different things. And as we progress, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, guess what? You will also be getting updates and new stuff coming and throwing at your way as well. So it's always being diligent in your position, be professional, but more so understanding the dynamics to these forms. So duty to inspect and disclose. So creates a broker duty to inspect and disclose, right? No required form of disclosure. It is the duty of the real estate broker or salesperson to a prospecting purchaser of real property comprised to between a single family residence up to 4 units or manufactured home to conduct what is called a reasonable, competent, and diligent visual inspection. And guess what? Look at how it was worded, okay? Reasonable, competent, and diligent in the visual inspection. Okay, now going back to what I was saying earlier, okay, you are not a contractor, you're not an electrician, you're not a roofer, you're not a landscaper or plumber, any of that stuff. Okay, so I want you to understand that those are for professional licensed individuals. Okay, you're licensed to do one thing and one thing only. It's to connect the buyer and the seller. That's your job, that's your responsibility. But ultimately, the approach, and this is again why new forms are created, because of a complaint, a lawsuit, something that transpires that ultimately the California legislature and the California Association of Realtors, define these forms, and now they create these for the protection of you, the agent. And when I started 24 years ago, there was no ABIT. What is an ABIT? It was created, maybe 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, if I remember correctly. Bottom line is, the form was created because of a lawsuit that happened. And then ultimately, who was responsible? Is it the seller's responsibility? Was it the agent's responsibility to bring the attention to the buyer? And this is why these forms are created, for that purpose, is to make sure that we're crossing every avenue, we're dotting every form, and ultimately providing as much information about the property and the surrounding area of the subject property. And that's important for you. And as you dive in more and more, you'll understand the dynamics of why we do what we do, not just to protect our clients, but more so to protect you and also the brokerage as well, okay? But I like the fact that it says reasonable, competent, and diligent visual inspections, right? Property offer for sale is to disclose to the prospecting purchaser all facts, material affecting the value or desirability. And please understand, that is a very crucial word, affecting the value or desirability. On the purchase agreement, folks, there is a part that says that all facts affecting the value and desirability. And that's very important for you to understand, is what can possibly affect value, what can affect desirability. There are several components, all right? If the house is ready to fall apart, right? That is the desirability and could affect the value. So when looking at all the forms and understanding the dynamics of the entire process, you have to understand too as well is look at it from the eye of a buyer as much as looking at it from the eye of the seller. Because even as a listing agent, folks, your job, your responsibility, and your due diligence regarding this is your avenue of also disclosing. From a listing side, you still got to do an ABIT, okay? Only if you're brokerage, but I know of all Keller Williams that do provide documentations that the ABIT is one of the key components to part of the disclosures. And it's, again, it's a disclosure. It's, information that we're providing from a agent's view and perspective. Now, also part of the process, and I've talked to you many times regarding this, is the transfer disclosure statement, which is better known as the TDS. What is the TDS and what does it create? Well, it creates requirements from a seller's point of view. Now, if the seller has lived in the property for many, many years, they know of potential issues regarding the property. Seller to complete section 1 and section 2, and we'll dive into it a little deeper. And then the listing agent to complete section 3. And I'll explain where the ABIT comes into place because it coincides, folks, with the transfer disclosure and the ABIT as a level of additional disclosures that you're providing the buyer. And then part 3, which is the cooperative buyer agent to complete section 4 as well, okay? So we'll dive in deep into the transfer disclosure statement, why it's important. And this is the number one reason sellers get into trouble, okay? They do not disclose. And this is where you come in as a professional and really ask those hard questions. You know, please, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, tell me a little bit about the property, any known issues regarding the property, and be transparent, be very open, and ultimately try to get as much intel from the seller because the seller might have forgotten that the roof was leaking. We live in Southern California, folks. Does it rain every week? No. Okay, we can go months and even possibly years before we have a heavy, heavy rain. And they might have forgotten that there was an issue in a certain bedroom in the closet tucked away with all these pillows and clothes that, you know, there's a little drip that they totally forgot. And, you know, if you don't bring that up as any known material facts regarding the desirability of the home, they're going to forget. And then ultimately, when the deal closes, that's when everything seems to always happen. It's like, oh my gosh, the deal closes. Now the buyer is calling you, literally calling you and complaining. Well, geez, we have a leak. Geez, we have water issues. Geez, we have foundation issues, electrical issues, plumbing issues. It's like, why did this never was brought to our attention? Why didn't any of this stuff ever happen during the escrow? And it always seems to happen after the fact, after it closes. That's when all the problems. I'll give you an example. Not too long ago, one of the agents had a listing, and you know, the agent represented the seller, and there was this huge tree right in front of the property. I mean, this was a humongous tree, and he mentioned it to me as like, you know, that tree is top heavy, literally top heavy. And he had mentioned it to the seller, you know, have you had any issues regarding this property? And the seller says, I've been here for 25 years. We've never had any problems with this tree. We had to do some cutting of some of the branches, and these branches, what he told me, were big. But that was about 12 years ago when we did that. Other than that, you know, we haven't had any issues. Well, guess what? As soon as the deal closes, 2 weeks after it closes, seller had already vacated the property, transfer of ownership. Seller, thank goodness, the buyer hadn't moved in there because they were going to do some remodeling before they actually bring the entire family. 2 weeks in, we had some Santa Ana winds, and the tree literally comes down. And not that it snaps from the very top, it literally snapped from the base of the actual tree. It literally just tumbled. Good thing it didn't fall into the property. Huge problem. I mean, if anyone would have been in the property when this tree would have fallen into the property, who knows? It could have been injury and even possibly death. The good thing is, even though it's not a good thing, the tree ended up going forward and literally blocked the street. And ultimately, the majority of the tree was on the other side of the neighbors. And it literally took about 2 weeks to cut it all down. I believe it even came out on the news. It was something crazy. And the agent the listing agent wasn't aware of it because one, the buyer's agent and the buyer never brought it to their attention, but somehow the seller sent out a photo because the neighbor who had the relationship with the previous seller said, hey, guess what? Your tree, it's down. You imagine, if that tree would have literally landed on the house, it would have literally destroyed the house. But these are, again, situation scenarios that you just never know that can happen, okay? The other scenario that I can tell you from these disclosures, the importance, and I think I mentioned, is the golf balls, okay? Seller owned the property, was the original owner, and if it wasn't for the agent saying, hey, I noticed that you hit a lot of golf balls in the back. Now, the owner owned an acre property, and the back was a ravine and a hill, so there was no one that lived in the back. But ultimately, throughout the years, he was using his backyard as a range to hit these golf balls. And the agent ultimately put two and two together and realized, when having a conversation, that the seller says there's probably thousands of golf balls throughout the years of me whacking these balls in the back. And that was an alert for the agent. And the agent says, hey, you know what? I think we need to disclose this. And the seller probably chuckles and says, why? Why do we need to disclose of the thousands of golf balls that are in the back of the ravine? Because the house was on a flat land, and then it would go down a ravine and then ultimately go up in the hill. And the house was probably, gosh, I don't know, maybe 500 yards. No way that a golf ball can reach. But the moral of the story is, good thing that the seller did disclose that on the TDS or on the SPQ, because again, it's a protection to everyone. One, you're disclosing to the buyer, hey, there's golf balls in the back. And two, you're protecting the seller because the seller has provided no material facts that could possibly affect the desirability of the property. What if the buyer would have said, well, tell me a little bit more of what you mean by thousands of golf balls. Well, in the 25 years whacking golf balls, there's probably hundreds and even thousands of them. What if scenario, seller never disclosed? And one late evening, it was dark, one of the homeowners happens to go down and slips or injures or steps on one of the golf balls, lose control, and ultimately hurts him or herself. Or even worse, maybe, cracks and ultimately dies from an incident that could have easily been prevented if they would have known. See, when you've been in this industry long enough, you start thinking a little different. You start acting a little different, and you start really asking a lot of questions. A lot of questions that ultimately lead to another open dialogue and conversation that will ultimately open it up to a conversation similar to these golf balls. Who would have ever thought about disclosing thousands of golf balls, right? But in reality, what if scenario, if they would have gotten hurt or even paralyzed because of this, or even death? Think about it, okay? Who do you think they're going to go after? And I'm not here to scare anyone, okay? By all means, that's not the intent, okay? But I want you to be very, very diligent in your approach and how you handle these transactions. Why? Because any good attorney will dissect these contracts and ultimately try to find blame, okay? They'll try to find a loophole that we made a mistake or we made an error or the seller made an error, and then ultimately open up a can of worms. This is why I'm just giving you a different perspective in how to approach these forms, okay? That's it, okay? You go out there and you go list property, you go out there and help buyers purchase homes. But the moral of what I'm trying to say is, be proactive, okay? If you see something and the seller may not have disclosed it, then why don't you ask the listing agent some questions, Okay, something similar to this. What if the listing agent was clueless about disclosing that the seller was clueless about this, but you as an agent in doing your physical inspections for your clients notice these golf balls? Okay, I would want to protect myself. If the seller is not disclosing or the listing agent, guess who will be disclosing? Me, myself, and I. I will put that as a notation and provide that as an incentive disclosure. And this is where the avid comes into place, or even an addendum in place that says, hey, based on my visual inspection of the property, I noticed, tons of golf balls in the backyard. How important is that? But more so, the peace of mind that you have disclosed what could be considered material fact. Okay, and that's a very, very important position to be, because in case this gets blown out of proportion and there's attorneys involved, guess what they're going to do? They're going to dissect these forms. They're going to bring you to ask you questions. You'll go through a mediation. You may go even through an arbitration or right into a potential lawsuit. What I'm saying here is protect yourself and protect your clients. There's no reason why you shouldn't be disclosing anything that may be a concern to the consumer, the buyer. Why is I'd rather protect myself, the company, and your clients from purchasing something that they could have easily prevented if they would have known about it. So I'd rather have and sleep well at night that I did everything in my power to make sure that anything that I see regarding the property, I bring to the buyer's attention. Why? Because I'm looking at it from a perspective in the future. What if scenario? What if that comes back and I didn't protect my clients, but I knew about it? Now it can be looked upon as negligence on your part. So think about that as well, and it's very, very easy to be involved in negligence. One little mistake, one little thing that you thought, well, it was something minor. I don't think I needed to disclose that, but guess what? That can open up a can of worms where now liability comes into place, and now, we have to get attorneys involved. So, look at it from that perspective, okay? And again, the transfer disclosure, we never fill out page 1 and page 2. That is the responsibility of who? The seller, okay? The seller is responsible to making sure that the seller discloses all. We as agents do not fill in the transfer disclosure, okay? And I want to make it very crystal clear to you folks that the transfer disclosure must be signed by the seller, okay? If they tell you, can you help us fill it out? Unfortunately, we cannot, okay? We are not responsible. This is not our home. This is a seller's responsibility, because if I make an error, make a mistake, that's going to come back and haunt you, and more so, you may be jeopardizing your license, okay? We don't want to be in that position, in that category, okay? Always, always, always have the seller fill this out, and if they don't understand, then obviously you can guide them and tell them what the whole purpose of this transfer disclosure form, or even the SPQ, the seller property questionnaire as well. Those documents must be, and I'll repeat it, must be signed only by the seller. Okay, and feel free, guys, to ask questions as well. Okay, as we go through the presentation. So the agent visual inspection, better known as the AVID, is a California Association of Realtors supplement to the transfer disclosure statement. The TDS includes optional paragraph in section 3, which is the 3rd page of the transfer disclosure, to add an AVID form for room-to-room agent disclosure. Okay, and I want to stress and emphasize that it is room by room, meaning what's a room? Well, it's a bedroom, a bathroom, a living room, a kitchen, okay, the backyard, the garage, anything and everything that is pertinent to the property is part of the room to room, okay? So when they talk about room, they're not just saying a bedroom, they're saying every part of the property: bathrooms, living room, family room, kitchen, hallways, okay? And what you're doing is basically, you're like what's the word I was going to use? You're like a bobblehead, for example. Okay, you're bobbing all over and looking from the floor to the walls, each side of the walls, the right, the left, up and down. What you're doing is a visual inspection of the property. You're noting this down as you go. If you see, from the smallest things to the big things, you document it. You document it. Okay. The small things can be a chip on the wall. Well, Simon, that's something small. Well, it may be small, but it may be a big issue to the buyer. Maybe that little small thing would have stopped them from buying the property, or at least making some negotiation. Well, Simon, you had a fiduciary responsibility to protect me. Okay, you are our agent. You should have saw this as well. And I'm thinking out loud again. I'm going a little aggressive on this because I want you to really think of your position. Okay, I want you to be that super top-notch agent. Okay, I want you to think that way, act that way. The reason is because as you do more and more transactions, you're going to start picking up on different things. You're going to start noticing things where before you probably didn't even know what to look for. Okay, now bear in mind, I'm not telling you that you have to start moving furniture. Okay, move a sofa, move a refrigerator, go under the sink, go on top of the ladder into the roof and start looking at it and say, well, I'm visually looking at the roof. No, okay, that's not what I'm saying. Okay, what I'm saying is, what is to your capacity. Okay, to your capacity. You're not going to go on a ladder and do all that. You're not going to go in an attic or any crawl space. Okay, well, I have a jumpsuit. I'm going to go under the house and make sure that there's no plumbing issues. Okay, now you know what? There's no need for that. You can probably do a visual from the outside and kind of visualize and see. And if you see anything, maybe it's debris. I've seen houses, folks, where you don't have to go under the house, but you can see there's a lot of debris, a lot of stuff in there, through the years. Maybe people throwing trash. I've seen animals, take stuff underneath the house. You want to note that. Absolutely. You want to put that down, write it down. On my visual inspection, I noticed that underneath the home, there's tons of debris or tons of trash, paper, whatever you see. Note it down, write it down. Why? Because now you're providing your client, the buyer, or the buyer in general, additional disclosures regarding the property. And that's, again, very important to do so. So the agent inspection disclosure, there you go, was created back in November of 2013. Okay, so just a little over 10, 12 years ago. Okay. All right. So part of the AVIT, the agent visual inspection disclosure, page 1 identifies the action the agent will not do. Here it is. Okay. So take a photo, write some notations or ask questions, folks, because this is, again, going to help you understand the dynamics of why this form is very crucial part of your transaction, and more so part of compliance. You're not going to do no offsites, no public records, okay, no common areas, roof and attic, no unaccessible areas such as chimney. Folks, I don't want you to crawl under or on top of the chimney and start doing inspections, okay? Well, there's a foul odor that smells coming from the chimney. Okay, well, that's maybe not visual, but that's something that you can note. There's a funny smell, foul odor that coming in. Maybe it's an old chimney that maybe there was an animal that got stuck in there. And I've seen possums, I've seen squirrels, and I've seen cats, come out of the chimney, and they get roasted from the heat and they cannot crawl out, because once they go in, it's very hard for them to go out, and that can happen. Okay, and don't say the Santa Claus either. Okay. Santa Claus is in there, okay? Don't say that. But what I'm saying is, if there is an odor, jot it down, okay? Write it down. Based on my visual inspection, I noticed that in the fireplace located in the living room, there was a foul odor that was identified. That's it. Don't go into so much details because, again, you don't know what it is. Okay, maybe it's a gas leak. All right. Instead, identify what you think it is and then just jot it down. Okay. Chimneys behind locked doors, under rugs, or any furniture. As I mentioned, okay, you're not going to go and start moving stuff. That is not your responsibility. If it's a kitchen table, you're not going to move the table just to see the floor. Just kind of look around, and see if there's anything that may be something you should be disclosing. Put buyers on notice of buyers' own duties, okay? Again, this is part of page 1, and it really clearly defines that you're not going to go out and do anything out of the unnormal stuff, or what was the word I was going to use? Ordinary. So be diligent and make sure that you're walking the property. Don't just write just to write and just add things just to add. Physically start walking the property. Every bedroom, even opening up the closets. Open up the closets and just kind of visualizing. Maybe in one of the closets you see a stain on the ceiling, okay? Or maybe you see a hole on the drywall, or a tear on the carpet, or even those sliding glass doors to the closet. Maybe it's not working properly. Okay, let me write this down. Because sometimes, believe it or not, even inspectors, home inspectors, miss items, and they're not doing a thorough inspection of the property. And guess what? You happen to find that and you jot that down, you look like a superhero, because now it'll give you more arsenal, more ammunition to help prepare the request of repairs. That's all it is, folks, okay? It's just an avenue that you are providing to your clients or to the buyer additional known issues regarding the property. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about page 2. Use the avid to make disclosures following inspections. All paragraphs should have a marking, if any. And if there is nothing to disclose, then you just put NA on bedrooms. Let's just say that the property only has a 2-bedroom, but the form has where you can put additional bedrooms. I think it has now up to 4 bedrooms. This one says, 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, 3 bath. But again, if there is no additional bedrooms, then you just put NA. Don't leave it blank. What you're doing is providing the buyer that this property is a bedroom. This property has 2 bedrooms. What if a living room or a so-called common area was converted into a bedroom? Okay, but on the profile on the MLS, it still shows a 2-2. How do you define that? Do you put that as a bedroom? It all depends. It all depends. If the property has a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, but in essence, the property shows as a 3-2, write that down. Based on the property profile, it indicates, and the MLS indicates it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. But after visually inspecting the property, the common area room was converted into a possible bedroom. And you'll know if it's a bedroom or not. One, what are the key components to identifying that it is a bedroom? Maybe there's a mattress, right? A bed in there. Maybe there's an air mattress, a bed in general. Maybe it looks like there is someone occupying that and sleeping there. Then you can assume that that is being used for the purpose of a bedroom. Then you want to note that down, folks. Okay. Indicate nothing noted if there's defects, no defects detected. So very, very true. As you can see on the form itself, hold on, let me move my cursor here, bear with me. If you look at the form here, it has entry, living room, dining room, other room, hall, stairs, bedrooms, bathrooms, and other rooms, okay? If there's nothing to be noted, then just put nothing to be noted. Try to make sure you fill in these forms as complete as possible Why? Because when the buyer receives these documents during their disclosure period, remember, this is a condition, okay? These disclosures must be provided to the consumer, the buyer, within what time frame? Okay, the answer is 7 days. 7 days after acceptance, the seller must provide the buyer with all disclosures. Okay, that's 7 calendar days from time of acceptance. So what does that mean? If your offer got accepted on a Monday, so Monday would be considered 0 days. So Tuesday would be 1, Wednesday would be 2, Thursday would be 3, Friday would be 4, and so on and so forth. So by the 7th day, you have to provide these disclosures to the buyer. What happens after the 7th day if the seller has not provided disclosures? Well, one, the buyer has the right to notice. The buyer has the right to send a notice to perform to the seller saying, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it's been 7 days. We have not received all disclosures regarding the property. Therefore, we're putting you on notice that if you do not provide us with these disclosures, we have the right to cancel. Okay, so that's one exit strategy that the buyer can use as a leverage to back out of a deal if they are not getting the forms in a timely manner. So I want you to please understand your position and your buyer's position. If you are not getting these disclosure, it is your job, your responsibility to be out there, sending out an email, calling, texting the listing agent, hey, it's 7 days, we still haven't received the disclosures, okay? Because remember, the default time period to release this as a condition is 17 days. Now, with everything that's going on right now, and it's a seller's market, very low inventory, they're pressing upon the buyer to release that as a condition a lot sooner, meaning they're not giving you 17 days. They may give you 10 days and sometimes even less than 10 days. So I want you to be in the right mindset to understand your position and your buyer's position, because the pressure will be on the buyer if they don't release these conditions. So all I'm saying is you've got to be diligent, folks, okay? Be very diligent in your position, but more so be proactive, okay? And part of your responsibility is your avid as well. You need to provide this to the buyer as well within that time frame. Seller provides all the disclosure, buyer's agent, part of your contingency period as well. It follows with this avid as well within that time frame of 7 days. Okay. Page number 3, other known conditions. Agent has a duty to reveal any known material fact affecting the property or defects on the property. Consider non-visual issues. All right, odors near manufactured facilities or animal farm, for example. Okay, so as I mentioned, part of your responsibility is to pick up on these items. If you know that LAX is a runway that the house happens to fall where the planes are coming down, that's a known material fact. What is one of these material facts regarding that is sound. You'll hear the plane coming. You also will notice pollution from it. Okay, what do these planes have is jet fuel, right? And the pollution that they exhaust when they're coming down and ready to touch on the airport. So again, one of the components is your consideration of knowing these things and knowing the surrounding area. Odors, another good thing. If the subject property happens to be in an area where there's animals, okay. One city that I can think of is like city of Pico Rivera as an example. A lot of horse properties, PV. Our neighboring city here has a lot of horse properties, okay? And a lot of horse and animals obviously comes with a price too. So identifying and making sure that you are doing whatever it takes to make sure that these documents are answered in the proper way. Sound near airports or air bays as an example.
Duties to inspect include accessible and visual exteriors, walls, but not necessarily roofs. So again, when you're doing your due diligence as a buyer's agent, folks, okay, and I'm only speaking from a buyer's perspective, and a buyer's agent who is representing the buyer, is what is your responsibility fall into this? And again, also the listing agent has to also provide this as part of their due diligence and disclosure period as well. So you walk the property, you see, even from the smallest things, what maybe discoloration, maybe there's stains on the carpet. I've seen where agents put notations, in one of the bedrooms, master bedroom, child's bedroom, we noticed, or I noticed a stain. Okay. But I want you to be very vague as well. Okay. And what I mean by vague, and we'll explain a little bit more, is you're not going to go there and measure the size of the stain. You're not going to say, well, based on my measurements here, it's like a 2-inch stain, what appears to be soda. Okay. We don't know if it's soda. We don't know what it is. We just notice that it's stained. It may be dark, it may be blue, it may be red, but there's a stain. Those are things that you can disclose and jot down and note as part of the agent visual inspections. Example of disclosures, 1, 2. So here are some key elements in how to approach these documentations. Identify what is visible, and do not speculate on cause, okay? Folks, I want to make it very crystal clear. We never speculate on anything. Speculations can cause liability, okay? Speculations can be a complaint coming your way, all right? We are not experts, all right? So don't act like you're the expert and know what it is. Well, from my past experience, this happened to my property. Maybe you do know, and maybe you have the expertise because this has happened in another transaction. But for the sake of argument, folks, never speculate. Just jot down what you see, and that's it. So here's the right way and the wrong way to identify situations. If you look at the on the sink on the very top, okay? So the right way, greenish black discoloration in the kitchen sink. Stain on living room ceiling near the dining area, okay? Mold of the XYZ variety in kitchen, or water stain in living room caused by leaking upper level window or bathroom. All right, so here's how you identify in the right way. So no, we never say mold because we don't know if it's mold. Mold of X, Y, and Z variety in the kitchen. Okay, we don't know if it's mold. We don't know what it is, so we're not gonna speculate. All right, water stain in living room caused by leaking upper level window or bathroom. Okay, again, that's speculations. There's greenish black discoloration in kitchen sink. That's it. Very simple, concise, to the point. And now let the buyer make their own conclusion. Let the buyer determine if they believe it's mold, because here's the question that I get. Well, Simon, do you think this is mold? How do you answer that? While my determination based on the analysis and chemical test that I did makes me believe that it is mold. Okay, no. Okay, you just write down what you see. Okay, stain on living room ceiling near dining area. That's it. Simple. Don't make it complicated. Okay, when you make it so complicated, folks, it's game over. All right. So I just want you to understand how the dynamics of these forms work. Let's go to example number 3 and 4. Okay. So you see picture number 1 on the very top, and then you see this big old crack near a door, a blue door. Okay. So let's go through the dynamics of how to properly disclose this. So large or small structural or cosmetic crack caused by earthquake or bad paint job. We don't know if an earthquake did this. What if it was a big guy that just ran into the wall and made this crack? We don't know this. So we're not going to speculate, folks, okay? We're not going to say that it was done by an earthquake or a poor paint job. We don't know. As long as the seller doesn't disclose that or doesn't tell us, we're going to assume that, yeah, it was probably done by earthquake based on what I see here, but we're not going to assume that, and we will never speculate. As long as the seller doesn't disclose that, it is your responsibility to do so. Also, we're not going to say 15-degree slope on the floor of a shifting slab. Again, we don't know if it's a slope. We don't know if it's shifting based on what. What are the parameters that identify that's happening? How do we get 15 degrees? Where does 15 degrees come from? Now, if you're an expert to that, then by all means you say. But if you're not, then there's no reason for it. The proper way of saying it is uneven floor near entrance to the bedroom. That's it. Uneven floor near the entrance of the bedroom. Crack in second bedroom near baseboard. That's it. That's the proper way of doing it. Once a buyer receives these avids and they see that, they're going to notice, okay, well, Simon, where is this crack in the second bedroom that I didn't notice? Well, let me look at my notation here. This is the bedroom. Bedroom number 2 has the crack. Here's the second bedroom, and this is where I noted it. Oh, thank you so much. Okay. Now it's really the buyer's responsibility to either do additional inspections. Okay. If there's big concern, now something like this, folks, okay, something of this magnitude, by all means, that's something very, very serious. Obviously, that's something caused a big shift in the home. Okay, I would definitely have the buyer's agent maybe get a general contractor, someone that can do a structural of the integrity of the home, because that's definitely serious. But we're not going to speculate. Okay, that is not our job. Just note it down. Crack on the wall near a blue door. Okay, simple. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the risk management and the tips in order for you to be in a position of non-liability. Agents complete forms TDS and or the advent for the company. There's almost always some defects or deficiency in the property. Before selecting nothing to be noted, make sure that you really, and I've always stressed this fact, more so on the transfer disclosure statement, because part 3, page 3 of the transfer disclosure, it really gives you guidelines to say, agent, did you note anything? Here's my view of it. Never say nothing noted on the transfer disclosure. Find something to note. Don't leave it blank. And don't say nothing to be noted. Why? Because in the eye of a trial, a trial of jury, what's going to happen is these attorneys will definitely dissect every aspect to the forms. And if they look at part of it and the judge sees this as part of their investigations when they're providing evidence, and they look at the transfer disclosure and they realize the agent did not note anything on here, it's going to raise a red flag. One, they're going to say, well, is this a new home, new construction? Even new homes, folks, have situations, have problems with it. Okay, you can find something to note. Don't leave it blank. Write something. If it's something minor, write it down. I'd rather you write something than leave it blank or nothing to be noted. Because for me, if I see an agent that writes nothing to be noted, one, believe me, I can find something. Look at wherever you're at. If you're at home right now, or at the office right now, or somewhere, just look around. I'm in one of the conference room here at the office, and I can see things that I can note down. I can see the carpet, I can see scratches, I can see discoloration that I can note down on the transfer disclosure and also on the Avid. So just for the sake of practice, make sure that you are visually doing your job and your responsibility to know things. Remember, nothing is too small. I'd rather have you write something than leave it blank. On the tip, there's almost always some defects or deficiencies in the property. Pause before selecting. Do not note or nothing to report. The advantages of using the Avid. I think by now I hope that I'm coming across as more understanding of the dynamics of the form. Okay. Establishes the compliance with the civil code. If a claim is made against the broker, the Avid may refresh the agent's memory of the events. Absolutely. Remember, folks, if you're doing a lot of transactions and 6 months, a year from now, this comes to a claim, meaning that the buyer got an attorney and now there's a letter sent out as a complaint, and you and the company are named on this claim, you're not going to remember all the events that transpired on that particular transaction 6 months from now or even a year from now. But you can look at the file and go back and jot, oh yes, I remember filling out the Avid and here's my notations. That'll jot some memory of what transpired. And you know how many times that I've like literally done this, where I've seen agents proactively, even though they were hesitant to disclose because one, they didn't want to kill the deal. Okay, and that's the first thing that agents do is like, gosh, if I write that down, the buyer may not want to buy the property because this is their first time home, and as it is, they're already nervous and scared. You try to sugarcoat it, or what we call hide it under the carpet, and hope that it never comes back. Here's the problem. It will come back, because one way or another, the buyer will find out about it and will go through the motions of the emotional aspect of the transaction. And now they get upset. Why wasn't I told about this? And now they start pointing fingers. And the first one they're going to start pointing fingers is the agents. Why didn't the agents provide us with this valuable information that could have set the parameters in a different perspective? Meaning the buyer might have not have bought the property if they would have known about this, or the buyer may have asked for a price reduction, credit, or fix the problem before closing the transaction. So you got to look at it from those avenues and perspectives. And a lawsuit may have help establish an agent's credibility. So again, these are the reasons we do what we do, is for not just your protection, but more so the protection of your clients, okay? The protection of your clients. And before we cut, I also want to provide you with an additional information. Let me go real quick with the visual agent form, just to give you a perspective of what it looks like. So going back here. Any questions? No one has any questions? Wow.
I have a question I asked earlier.
Okay, I can't see the annotations here, so I apologize. Let me go to the chat. So what is Let me go real quick. The disclosures are given before the buyer pays for an inspection. Is that your question, Mona?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a very, very good question. It all depends. Because remember, if the buyer is limited on time to do inspections, and sometimes it's less than 17 days. Now, the contract stipulates this. The contract says that the buyer has 17 days to do whatever inspections they need to satisfy themselves to the overall condition of the property, meaning 17 times from the acceptance. Okay, remember, the first day of acceptance is considered 0 days. The following day starts the clock, meaning you have 17 days to do any and all inspections. General inspections, plumbing inspections, roof inspections, structural inspections, landscaping, electrical, any and all inspections. And here's the problem. A lot of buyers just do what is called the general inspection. And that general report will provide you with some indication of issues and problematic problems with the property. It is the buyer's responsibility to dig in deeper, because a general inspection is not going to give you an estimate of what the cost to repair or replace. The general inspection report will not provide you with the labor to do that. What if it's a sewer issue and the buyer did not do a sewer inspection? Run a cable with the camera and make sure that the integrity of the sewer line is intact. And the home was built in the 50s, and there was a family of 5 or 10 people. And throughout the years, it's deteriorated the sewer line, that if we didn't do an inspection, now is it required? No. No inspections are required. How do you protect yourself from that happening? Well, you know what, Simon, I'm a contractor, and I see homes on a regular basis. I do not want to do any inspections. I'm going to buy the property. Can the buyer be in that position? The answer is yes, they can. How do we protect ourselves? You want to document that. How do you document it? You have the buyer sign a waiver. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, by all means, you're going against the broker's advice to do general inspections and any inspections, but we can't force the buyer to not do any inspections. If the buyer wants to avoid any inspections, that's their discretion. We cannot force them. How do we protect ourselves? Easily. You have them sign a waiver. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I understand that you don't want to do any inspection. That's perfectly fine. But to protect not just myself and the company, there is a waiver that needs to be signed that we've indicated that you're going against the broker's advice, that we recommend that you do a general inspections and any additionals, because we do not know how the property looks from the internal aspect of it, the structure, the internal. What I mean, what's on the other side of the wall? Is there a water leak, electrical issue? Maybe there's rodents in there that we don't know. And this is why there's a foul odor from years and years of rodents in there. Who knows? But that's how you protect yourself when it comes to the dynamics of the contracts and the flow. The buyer can do whatever they want. We encourage the buyer to do as many inspections. And even if the seller gets upset, well, why is the buyer asking for so many inspections? Because they have the time frame to do so, for one, and that's again to make sure that what they're buying is in sound mind. Remember earlier what we said. What was the question? Is the whole purpose of doing these inspections and making sure that we as agents protect ourselves is for the desirability of the home. Okay, because if there's issue, there's no desirability, because now it paints a bad picture with the buyer. I would have never bought this property if I knew that there was issues with it. That's what we're saying. Look at the bigger picture, folks. And that's what I'm explaining to you, and the importance. But going back to Mona's question, disclosures are given before the buyer pays for an inspection. No, sometimes you will do inspections immediately before you get the disclosures. Because of time of the essence, if the buyer is only given 10 days to do inspections, and out of those 10 days, 7 days, the seller has to provide these disclosures. You're on it, your buyer's on it. They want to get the motion going, and may order a home inspector to do the inspection of the property within days, 2 days, or even the following day. I've seen where you'll pick up the phone, you got your offer accepted, and immediately you got an inspector going the following days, and you still haven't received the disclosures. So to answer your question, Mona, no. It really depends. Now, I want you to be the proactive agent, okay? And now we're going to flip the hat. And what I mean by flip the hat is now you represent the seller, okay? And as a listing agent, what I want you to be is that diligent, professional, and ultimately you got everything lined up, meaning that even before you even have the property on the market, you're going through negotiations, it's on the MLS, you already had the seller fill out all the disclosures. So at the moment that the seller accepts the buyer's offer, guess what? That day or the following, you're already providing all disclosure. How awesome is that from a listing agent's perspective, and how fast and crucial you are and efficient you are? I want you to be that agent where you're on top of your game and you are providing these disclosures instead of dragging your feet. And now you got the acceptance. Now you're setting an appointment with your sellers, and now you're spending, a couple hours going through all the disclosures. And now you're providing these disclosures to the buyer, and that's just now 4 or 5 days from now. Okay. So again, looking at the bigger picture, be that agent that is diligent, and before that property even hits the market, you want to make sure that you already have the forms and the disclosures ready. If the seller did any inspections prior, any termite inspections prior to putting the property on the market, have those all ready. Submit all disclosures, all reports to the buyer, so the buyer can do their due diligence and determine if they want to do any additional inspections. So being that proactive agent is very, very important. And more so, being that efficient agent will definitely get things a lot faster. Okay. I'm not sure what 31 means. Mike, you want to elaborate a little bit more?
Thank you, Simon, for answering the question. Now,
My
I know
pleasure.
now we're in a bit of a seller's market. However, eventually things are going to shift back. And can you hold off on the buyer doing an inspection until they get the seller's disclosures? Of course, if we're not in a seller's market.
Absolutely. I love the question. Here it is. I'm gonna be honest, transparent, and keep it very open and very real, folks. Okay. You can ask whatever you ask. It really depends on the seller and the listing agent what the outcome is. Can you stop from doing any inspections, or more so wait till you provide those disclosures? The answer is yes, you can. Okay, but that does not stop the time frame. If the inspection contingency is 17 days, and we're going to use that as, for the sake of argument, we're going to use that as the number, right? The buyer has 17 days to release that as a condition. And you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and you still have not received any seller disclosure. Now you're 10 days in, and believe me, 10 days will come and go before you know it. And you're still waiting, and you haven't done any inspection. And then 16 days, you get those disclosures, right? And now the buyer is looking through these disclosures and realizes, oh gosh, part of the transfer disclosure, the seller noted this. You only have one additional day. Because if you have a savvy listing agent, folks, what's going to happen is that listing agent is going to say, hey, 17 days is up. If you don't release this as a condition, we're going to send the notice to perform to have you release that. And if you don't release it, we're going to cancel on you. So how do you approach that position? How do you approach that circumstances and avoid waiting till the last minute? You can do whatever you want on this. You can say, we're not going to do any inspections. But what's there to say that the seller and the listing agent says, okay, it's going to be about 7 days before we get the disclosures. So if you want to hang on tight, that means you only have 10 more days left to do any inspections. And then remember, just by doing the inspection, folks, doesn't mean that it's done. There's still negotiations. Remember last week, if you were on the call, we were talking about request repairs, right? You still got to compel your position. Is the buyer going to ask for, for repairs? Either replace, repair, credit, or price reduction. So there's still that time frame, and that goes against the buyer because that's still ticking the time for the 17-day period, folks. Meaning the seller doesn't care. They know that 17-day is going to happen, and on that 17 days, the buyer has to release that as a condition. And if they don't, then the seller can send a notice to perform. Now, with that being said, does the buyer have the opportunity to extend that as a condition to release? The answer is yes. Okay. If you know you're in the crunch time, right? And let's just say that it's 10 days that they gave you to do your physical inspections, and something happens, you can always ask for an extension of time, which is ETA form, the ETA. Edward, Tom, Edward, T as in Tom, and A as in Adam. So the extension of time addendum, right? That is a form that is presented to the listing agent and the seller to allow the buyer more time to release a contingency, any contingency, if it's physical, if it's disclosure, if it's appraisal, and even if it's loan contingency. The ETA form allows you an extension. Now, just because you fill out the extension doesn't necessarily mean that the seller will grant that extension. It doesn't mean that they'll allow the extension. So I hope that you're in good terms with the listing agent, and then you're in constant communication throughout the entire process. So in case you do need time of extension, that the seller and the listing agent will grant that and allow you additional time frame to release that as a condition. But if there is an issue and nothing seems to be going in the direction, and you're getting, a strong vibe that is the listing agent is going to be very harsh on their timelines, because they know that there's other buyers waiting as a backup offer. They may be very stringent in their position, and they may not allow an extension of time. So keep that in mind, because again, these are the reasons we have timelines that protect the buyer and protect the seller. And if the seller sends out the notice to perform, the buyer has 48 hours to make a decision. Do I continue, or do I cancel and back out and retain my deposit? If they continue, then they realize that they have to release that as a condition. And if they don't, then the seller has the right to cancel. Okay. All right. So I still don't understand what 31. Sorry, not related to this discussion. So Mike, okay, what 32?
My apologies, Simon.
Oh, okay. So you don't have a question?
No.
Okay, awesome, cool. All right, so real quick, guys, because I know we're past our time. We have what is called the Agent Visual Inspection Disclosure, which is the California Civil Code 2079. And what it really defines, it's a 3-page form. I hope everyone can see it, right? Can you see the advent? Yes? Can you see the advent?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, sorry, I don't see faces or expressions, so I'm not sure if you're seeing what I'm seeing. Okay, so the ABIT goes through the motions of, California law,
California law does not require an agent to inspect the following areas that are not reasonably or normal accessible areas of offsite public record. So again, when a buyer is asking you, can you please provide us with records or permits? That is not our responsibility. It is the buyer's responsibility to go to the city, the county, and get whatever pertinent information that they want regarding the subject property. It's not your job or responsibility. Common areas, planned developments, condo stocks, anything, it's not a responsibility. And then what I like is the agent's inspection limitations, because the agent's duty is limited to conducting a reasonable, competent, and diligent visual inspection of reasonable and normal accessible areas of only the property being offered for sale. There are several things that the agent will not do. What follows is a non-exclusive list of examples of limitations on the scope of the agent's duty. And it goes to roof or attics. Agents will not climb into a roof or an attic. Interior, agents will not move, look under, behind furniture, pictures, walls, hanging. So it goes through the motions of things that, an agent will not do. That is not our job, folks, okay? Even though it seems like sometimes we're, doing more and above and beyond than we should. And this is why I want to make sure that you are crystal clear of what your job title is and what your job title is not, okay? And it goes to the motions of the disclaimers. Review any disclosures obtained by the seller, obtain advice about the inspections of the property from other appropriate professionals, and review any findings of those professionals with the person who prepared them. If buyer fails to do so, buyer is acting against the advice of the broker. Now, this form is only utilized for a single family residence, duplex, triplex, and fourplex. Are you required to use this on a 5-unit apartment? No. Are you utilize this form on a vacant land? No. Do you use this form on a manufactured home? Yes. Manufactured homes, you do provide this ABIT. Is this form required on a business opportunity? No. Commercial, retail, industrial? The answer is no. This is only for single family residence. SFR, manufacturer, duplex, triplex, and fourplex. Anything above 4 units is not required. Okay, so I want to make sure you're clear on that. Now, going back, it goes with the inspection, weather conditions. What's the condition of when doing this inspection? Is it clear? Is it rainy? Is it sunny? Is it cloudy? You want to write that down and note it. Now, I know that Glide, I think it's Glide, if you haven't used that platform, allows you, and they go really specific on what weather condition. They even, I think, go into the GPS of where the subject property is located. It's pretty cool. Now, here are the underlying reasonable, competent, diligent visual inspection, okay? Excluding common areas, the entry, living room, dining room, kitchen, other rooms, halls, stairs, bedrooms, bathrooms, other rooms, others. Here you can click if there is an addendum. Maybe the house is a mansion that you're listing, right? Or your buyer is buying a mansion that has 10 bedrooms. You can add an addendum to it for additional rooms or structure. Garage, parking, anything and everything that you can visually see and know, you want to put it on this ABIT. Now, it is maybe a little time consuming, but it's better to over disclose than not disclose anything. And if the property doesn't have any additional bedrooms, then just put in NA, okay? That's simple, and go on to the next one. If the second section doesn't have anything, then NA for the second one as well, okay? Exterior building, yards, other things that you see, conditions that were not specified. Again, remember, sound, odor, okay, location. These are all pertinent information that you want to include on this ABIT as well. Remember, if it's near a high school, elementary, a park, a retail and airport, transportation, maybe the neighbor has, you know, a dog or a farm. All these are all pertinent information that you want to put on the on this disclosure. Okay. So that's what your ABIT looks like. Let me just quickly show you with the TDS and where this information is at real quick. So when you go and look at the TDS, okay, here's the transfer. It's a 3-page. Page 1 and page 2 are filled by the seller and the seller only. Okay. Page 1, this is all material facts regarding the desirability of the property. And part 3 is where the agent, okay, right here, where the agent fills it in. This is where I want you to be very clear that you don't want to put none, okay? There's nothing noted. Never, never, never put anything that says none, nothing to note, because there's always something that you can note. You want to click on here, see attach agent visual inspection, okay? And never check agent notes, nothing to disclose, okay? Find something to disclose, folks, okay? Find something to disclose. By leaving this, you're exposing an opportunity to be involved in a complaint. I've seen it firsthand, folks. Do not leave this as nothing to disclose, because guess what? Attorneys and judges will dissect, and if it's a trial by jury, okay, they'll try to expose the integrity of your position, and more so find you of incompetent because, one, was the agent not being efficient? Was the agent being lazy? Did not want to fill it in? Find something. If it's something small, note it, put it in. Okay. And then again, the agent signed, both the listing agent for the seller and the buyer's agent for the buyer. All right. Any questions? Any additional questions? All right. I think we have another question here. No, I don't think so. Sorry, I didn't get it again. All right. If there is no additional questions, that concludes the class. I have a question. Okay, Megan, what's your question? We can't hear you. Megan, is there any way you can provide a contract checklist? I'm not sure if I understand your question. Are you referring to a list of what disclosures? Is that what you're referring to? Like a table of content of all the contracts we need for a listing? Okay, that's a very good question. Every brokerage should have a checklist of items. Okay, the checklist provides you what the listing agents. And let me see if I can show you something real quick. Bear with me momentarily, because the California Association of Realtors, I believe they also have where they have a checklist, but bear with me momentarily. Let me see if I can find something for you that you can use for that purpose. And that's a very good question, because there is a checklist, and every real estate company should provide you with a checklist of items of what the listing agent should look like and what the seller checklist should look, buyer's checklist should look like as well. Let me see if I can pull it up for you real quick. All right, so let me share my computer real quick. That's a very good question. Going back and share. Okay, minimize this, pull up this. I know it's kind of small. All right, does everyone see this seller disclosure checklist?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I see it.
Okay. So this is straight out of the California Association of Realtors. And I can show you how to navigate and get this. But here it is, folks. Here's the transfer disclosure, the SPQ, unless exempt, then you use the ESD. But here it goes through the motions, and I love it because the platform allows you to get additional inspections and more information. So what is the transfer disclosure and the seller's property questionnaire? Although the TDS is required in residential's 1 to 4 transactions, there are a number of exceptions. Common exemptions include probate, REOs, bankruptcy, and some trusts. And then you can click on a certain form here and it'll provide you with the guidelines. So let me click on this, and this, maybe this one doesn't have it. Let me go back. Let's go here to the AVIT. As an example, a visual inspection is required in nearly all residentials 1 to 4 transactions. The AVIT is a requirement form by agents, may also use a third page of the transfer disclosure. And then if you click on that, it should provide us, again, it may be my computer, but then it provides you with key questions regarding what that form is. And here it is regarding that Easton and Strandberger case, which was part of Century 21. Where can I find the law requires of a real estate licensees to inspect the property? And that civil code that we talked about, 2070. So it has a lot of resources, folks, and I want you to be very diligent in your approach. Study, understand the dynamics and research, and all this is part of your membership of the California Association of Realtors. Okay, but going back to this checklist, you know, it goes with the AS, the natural hazards, the Megan's Law, you know, the AD, which is the disclosure regarding relationship. And a lot of these forms are part of the seller and also the buyer's responsibility. How do you navigate through this? It's very simple. So when you go to the National Association of Realtors, right? You click into your account, just go to research or search, and then just type in checklist. That's it. Enter. And that takes you here to the seller disclosure checklist. Okay. You click on that, and that'll take you right into this this document right here. And then you click on that, and there you go.
Is there a buyer's disclosure checklist?
There is a buyer's one too. So let me see if I can.
Thank you, by the way. This is very helpful.
So this checklist also provides to all buyers. You see that? So these are, again, it breaks it down to what is the buyer and what is the seller. So these are, again, the SBSAs, the State Buyer and Seller Advisory. You know that the seller will provide that, but it's also the buyer's responsibility to fill it in. But what's so cool about it is it's a 14-page risk management advisory. So how do you compel your position? How do you articulate your conversations, right? Well, here you go, folks. I'm going to see if, I don't know if I can cut and paste this and put it into, let me see if I can put it into our group chat here. I'm not 100% sure, but let's try it out. Paste. All right, so I just pasted on the chat. It may still ask you to put in your login, but just remember, when you go to the California Association of Realtors on search, just put checklist, and then that'll navigate right into the seller buyer checklist of disclosures and documentation. It's a great resource, folks. And if you're having difficulty, just email me, okay? Email me or email your broker, and that'll provide you with the checklist. I'll put my email just in case on the chat as well, and I can definitely provide you with the checklist. Okay. Any other questions? I hope I was able to answer that regarding the checklist, Megan. All right.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful. I know KW and Simi Valley, they gave me a checklist, but I lost the first page. So I compiled a binder and I only have the second page. So that's why I think I'm gonna email you, and I don't know if you could help me out. I'd greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, not a problem.
Great,
Just
thank you
shoot me an email and I'll be more than happy to provide you with that.
so much.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I didn't anticipate that I would go almost 30 minutes over my time. I appreciate all of you for being on the call. Thank you for seeing some of the faces here on the call. So again, every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, I will provide you with some type of case studies. And then we'll definitely go into really diving in on the pros and cons and how to protect yourself, more diligent, and also provide more value to your buyers and your sellers. So again, thank you for hanging in there with me. If you have any additional questions, by all means, please reach out, email me as well, and I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions. Okay, appreciate you all. Have a phenomenal afternoon, and I'll see you on the
Thank
next
you.
call.
Thank you so much, Simon.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Simon.
Thank you.